So I'll call to order the meeting, and Francesca, you'll do a roll call, please.
Yes. Commissioner Castagna.
Here.
Commissioner Evans.
Yes.
Commissioner Peak.
Here.
Commissioner Sovereign.
Here.
Commissioner Thomas.
Here.
Commissioner Witowski.
Here. Let's see, the first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or corrections to the minutes?
Oh, did we get John O'Neill?
John O'Neill's here.
Oh, yeah. All righty. The minutes, have any changes or corrections? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I motion to approve.
Second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any other further discussion? And then Francesca, you have to do roll call again?
Yes. Castagna.
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
O'Neill.
Yes.
Peak.
Yes.
Sovereign.
Yes.
Thomas.
Still here.
Witowski.
Yes.
Great.
And then the next item is public comments. Francesca, will you check if anybody would like to speak to us?
Yes, there are two ways to virtually participate in today's Museums and Cultural Arts Commission meeting. You may join on Zoom using your computer, tablet, or smartphone, and you may call into the Zoom meeting. To join the meeting on Zoom, use the link or phone number on the agenda at isearchmonterey.org. To call in by telephone, dial toll-free 833-568-8864, enter meeting ID 161-622-2299, followed by the pound sign. If prompted to enter a participant ID, press pound. Detailed instructions on using Zoom are available at monterey.org/public meetings. If you make a public comment, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the Zoom toolbar. If you dialed in by phone, raise your hand by dialing *9. Public speakers will be called on in the order of their hands raised. Please stay within the time limit established for today's meeting. That will be shown using a countdown timer on the screen. If you are connected live on Zoom, the timer is accurate with no delay. Today's meeting is streamed live on the city's YouTube account at youtube.com/City of Monterey with an approximate 10-second delay, and on Comcast channel 25 with up to a 90-second delay. If you do plan to make a public comment, please join the meeting using Zoom or by telephone and ensure that you join in time to accommodate the delay. As always, we do look forward to your public comment. And Chair Witowski, there are no public comments at this time.
Thank you. So the first item on the regular agenda is the activity report. Inga, would you like to give us the highlights, please?
Sure. I can turn it over to Jordan because most of it is a report of what he's been working on. But I will mention that in the report, we say that Jordan and I met, and at the time, it wasn't certain what was going to happen with the library director position overseeing museums. But I'm happy to report, and of course we'll talk about it at later in the agenda, but that the library board did take action on the 24th of February saying that they agreed that it should stay with, museums should stay with the library director position, so that's good. And the other thing that I added, but Jordan probably saw it, was Jordan found another problem with some city property, and that was with the bust of Kalisa Moore when he did his inspections of the buildings and of our public art. So it's really helpful that he does those regular checks, because he also detected a fire, so that luckily had been put out. So I'll turn it over to Jordan.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Jordan.
Those are the most exciting things that have happened this last month. Just to go off of what Inga was saying about the Kalisa Moore statue, I was doing my bi-weekly examinations of our locations, and was walking by the bust and noticed that the cup was sitting upside down on the bust. And I don't know how they did it, but they pried it out of her hand, the cup, which was attached, it either welded or was somehow part of the sculpture. And the stem is still intact, but it is at a 90-degree angle. And so either someone was really strong or they had something that was like a rubber mallet that they could just bend it. I don't know how they did it, but we have to figure out how we can get that repaired if it's repairable. And then the other incident Inga mentioned was a fire at the Pacific Biological Laboratories. Last Monday, I was in the backyard and noticed, if you know the fencing that goes along the pathway up to the coast, one of the beams there, it was charred at the bottom of it. And so while I was looking back there, I noticed it, and there was a bunch of yellow chemical residue around it. And so I'm like, well, one, I'm not going to touch that because I don't know what it is. And two, I do not recall this fire being there. And so while I was looking there, a hotel employee saw me and asked what I was doing because thankfully he was doing what he was doing because he thought I was someone who was just back there. And so I explained who I was, and he had explained that there was a fire and that it was put out and everything was fine. And so he had made it sound like the fire department came out, which we found out they didn't because we contacted them and said, hey, what happened? And they didn't know. And so I talked with someone at the hotel, and we were very fortunate that someone who was in one of the rooms that overlooks the backyard of the lab, it was around 10 o'clock at night, I think, saw two gentlemen on the pathway smoking. One guy flicked his cigarette into the backyard and it sparked a fire. It just immediately started. And so they reported it to hotel staff. Hotel staff climbed around the fence at the very end of it where it ends and put it out with water and a fire extinguisher.
Wow. Huh.
And so we're very grateful for the Intercontinental staff for taking care of that, because who knows how much damage it would. I don't think it would have spread to the building, but it did enough damage that the beam needs to be replaced. But those beams need to be replaced anyway because they are just old, dry, and crumbling. So that is another thing that we're looking into, trying to figure out how or where the funds are going to come for that. And Inga knows more on that logistical stuff.
Oh, I think
But is there any follow-up with Intercontinental management, possibly signs prohibiting smoking along that access way or whatever else?
that's a good question. I can look into that. I did talk to our fire chief, who said, and he sent me the report, that there was a call to fire to send an engine to Cannery Row, and I think it was the Intercontinental address. And when they got there, and it was reported that there was black billowing smoke. And when they got there, there was no sign of smoke. So the motel folks must have gotten it put out pretty quickly.
And it was also at night, so it'd be really hard to see smoke if you're driving by on Cannery Row.
Right. And I talked to the same manager at the desk at the Intercontinental, and she said, oh, well, I didn't go out when the fire engine came by because I was dealing with another emergency at that point. And in fact, the fire did get dispatched. And so they used the same engine for a 911 call for an emergency with a guest at the Intercontinental. So
Yeah.
it was quite the night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Are there any other questions by the commissioners on any aspect of the activity report?
I have a question, Bill. I wonder, Jordan, what is the statue? What's the material it's made out of?
I believe it's bronze.
It is bronze. And I had recalled that there was a bronze foundry over by CSUMB, but I guess that has closed. So we need to find another bronze foundry that can do some repair for us.
The original artist is no longer around.
Right. The original artist is deceased.
I can check with a blacksmith to see if they can repair bronze.
Okay,
You like?
great.
And the Monterey
Sure,
Sculpture
sounds-
Center, they're not around anymore?
They were the ones out by CSUMB, right?
Oh, I don't know. They used to be on Camry Road. That's where I remember them, but
When I looked online, I couldn't find anybody that was nearby. But I do know that there are sculptors that work in that medium in the area. So, for instance, the people that did the bas relief at the conference center, I think that's bronze. The tour house gift of the Jeffers plaques. So that was another thought that I had. I could contact that artist.
Any other questions by the commissioners? Francesca, do we have to open this up for public comment also?
Yes, every item. We'll make it quick this time. Make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand, or if you called in by phone, dial *9. Trevotowski, there are no public comments.
Oh, thank you very much. So the next item is the budget process. Inga, could
Right.
you go over that staff report?
Sure. So it's fairly brief as well. It's just sort of a heads up that I've attached the schedule for when different aspects of the budget are due. The requests for funds for museum are due to finance on the 10th. And I will be, and I already did request. So the requests for position changes were due on the 25th of February. So I did put in a request for a full-time position in the Museums and Cultural Arts Division, just one full-time position. And then I'll be submitting a request for other funds. And I will keep you posted as I hear back from the city manager regarding the amounts that are being requested. I think we're being very, very conservative in our requests, so hopefully it'll be honored. There is a sort of catch-22 for us because they look at our statistics, but of course our numbers for various things, except for Pacific Biological Lab attendance, are down because, for instance, the Holton Hall Museum is only open 2 days a week instead of 7 days a week.
Inga and I have had a chance to talk today, and I'd like to propose to the commission that we authorize Inga to draft a letter from our commission to the city council strongly supporting as a minimum one full-time position. We all hope that would be Jordan, but according to personnel rules, he has to go through the appropriate process. But it's pretty amazing what Inga and Jordan have done to keep all three museums open with only a half-time person, and Inga just being part-time manager for the museum. So
Francesca, of course, doing
and
all the
Francesca,
admin.
and Francesca's assistants. So I thought that if it would be appropriate for the commission to authorize Inga to draft such a letter, my signature, if you want, you could review it before it goes out, or just authorize Inga and me to take care of it.
I second that.
Yeah, I would certainly think that's a good idea.
I
I strongly support it.
don't quite understand the relationship between this question and the question as to how the directorship will be taken. If this was in a full-time position and in addition to Jordan's position, which I thought we were funding differently. I can see that, but we can't continue, in my mind, with the small amount of attention that we have from staff at this time.
I think the city manager, Mike, the city manager has agreed that the library director the new library director will continue to manage the museum. So they would provide that management support. We'll to get secretary assistance from Francesca, and what Inga and I have talked about is given, a more realistic approach is to ask the city council strongly to authorize one full-time person. We could ask for more, but the city, if you've been following their council meetings and the updates.
That's what I heard was that they have $15 million left over, that they're playing the game of, oh, well, we need to put that in reserves. That's nonsense.
We can always ask for more. I'm just saying, I know if you got the city letter yesterday, they went through a long litany of stuff that they put some money back in reserves, some money to deal with the pensions, some money to rehab many public facilities. It just my reaction talking to the city manager and one or two of the council members, I doubt that we're going to get more than a full-time person in addition to the part-time director and part-time secretarial assistants. But let's open it up for discussion.
Well, I certainly concur with Bill. If we're the most historic city west of, I guess, the Mississippi or someplace at any rate, and
Santa Fe.
We don't have our museums open as long as they are. I think there's, Inga committed earlier today that the city, some regulation says that Colton Hall is open all but 3 days a week. And if you look at nationally, if you look at museums, they're all opening up. They may have reduced hours on some days, but they're all opening up. And what drives TOT, which is a big chunk of what the budget is, the general account. And it's people that come here and stay here. And so the more things they have to do, the more likely they are to stay. And there are people now that really do look at cultural and historic things when they go places, not just the aquarium here and the sports center. I don't think visitors use our sports center. I'm glad they're going to put some staff back into it because we need our neighborhood centers and programs for the locals. But I think we want to support the visitors so that they will in turn support us. And that's my 2 cents. And I'd be happy to help write the letter.
And also, as I mentioned earlier today, I worked in a museum where most of my adult life, and when you're applying for grants and that kind of thing, granting agencies look at your personnel. And if they see you don't have a full-time person, they're going to be a little more hesitant to give you that grant because they're concerned about those kind of things.
Can someone remind me of how many employees we had before we started cutting back for COVID?
Sure. So we had some hours from the library director. Then we had 50% of Dennis Copeland's time. And we had 30 hours a week each from Claire and from Chalet. And then we had part-time hours from folks like Jordan.
And I think as we talked at the last meeting, the lack of that part-time help from Claire and Chalet has led us to that we can't do the changes of art in the conference center, as well as our candlelight concerts at Colton Hall. So, besides Bob's good points about the TOT and the visitor attractions to historic and cultural activities, I think we can outline those two that are geared toward locals and tourists. The question is, do we ask for more than one full-time person? I understand that in a better budget situation, we would be asking for more, but I sincerely doubt that we're going to get more, but it's up to the commission. If you want to say as an absolute minimum, we need one full-time staff person, or we can argue for more.
I'll just remind you that you can recommend, and you should recommend to City Council what you feel is right, but I've already submitted a request for one full-time and no cuts to our part-time budget.
Well, I don't think there's any harm in asking for more than we think we can get. So if you want to ask for another half FTE,
I think that that it's a stretch that we'll get one full-time position.
But I think we should make the point that if we're going to open up the museums, and if the number of tourists can continue to increase as the pandemic goes down, we need more than one full-time employee. What happens if that full-time employee has a personal emergency or gets sick? Then we don't have anybody. And if President's Day was any indication of how the public is going to come during the summertime, one person is not going to handle the crowd. That's my 2 cents.
So we do have in the budget right now, although we haven't received authorization to open that many days, we do have in the budget the amount of funds for PTS staff that we used to have when we had the museum built.
Oh, Ingrid, but that's not Claire and Chalet. You're talking about the people working at Colton Hall.
Hourly, right.
Yeah, so the question, I think, and John posed a good question, should we ask for a full-time person and a part-time person up to 20 hours and give all the reasons that we've articulated tonight? Or should we go with just the one full-time? I feel fine with John's comment that we ask for more and we stipulate what we can do and the events that we can provide with that staffing.
I think we ought to ask for one full-time person in addition to what's already in the budget, not compromise what's in the budget. You've got hours for Colton Hall. You've got a half-time person doing what Jordan is doing. And
Yeah.
now we need another whole person to really get things rolling again.
Okay. Is there a motion to that effect?
I'll
No,
move that.
no. I don't
Oh,
believe.
wait, we have a motion there. Is there a second? And then we can discuss it.
I'll second it.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to hopefully keep the part-time director, part-time of Francesca's time, half-time person, and in addition to that, one full-time person in the museum office. Go ahead, Mike, you had a question or comment?
There may be some short period here when we have to wait until the obvious recovery is so piled up money that the city begins to say that we can get back to where we were. But I think that's a short-term problem. Our long-term problem is a director for the museum. And I was involved in the last screening of candidates when the library went out to fill Kim Bowie Burton's position. And there were, sort of 2 categories of people, if you'd like. There were very experienced people who wanted to come here and retire. We did hire one of those. That was a disaster. The other set of people are young, mostly female, library trained people with, master's degrees in library science, experience. But, when they see that requirement on the list that exists of description for the position that says you have to know how to handle museums too, they're gonna say, and we'll get somebody who's a great librarian but has no capability in the museum area. This is nonsense to try to go out and continue, in my mind, leaving the museums underneath the library. Because it's going to be very hard to recruit a good library person who has any interest in the museum. So,
Well, I tend to disagree with that, Mike, because Kimberly Burton was a good library director, and she was in charge of the 3 components of the history in Monterey, where we had the city of Monterey, Monterey History and Art, and state parks. Inga, when was the last time we had a full museum director? That was Jim Conway, right?
Right.
How long ago was that?
That was, it was before 2010, or 2011 was when Dennis's position was split to cover part of it. So he must have passed away right around 2010.
Okay, and so Dennis had that museum experience, and he was also the archivist with the library.
Right.
Well, Mike, we're asking for a full-time position. We're hoping that person, if this goes through, if this motion is approved, we would have 1.5 people skilled in museum operations. We would recruit specifically for a full-time person with museum background, right, Inga?
Yes.
So what we're doing with the library staffing is we're phasing in library staffing over a 3-year period. And so this coming year, we're asking for a little bit more, with the idea that we'll ask for a bit more in year 3 as a recovery plan. So I agree that we need more staff in museums, but I would recommend that we proceed cautiously. I think that the economy is, coming back more quickly than anticipated. But I think a full-time position that can do a lot of different museum-related work, sort of like if we could wave a wand and have Jordan be full-time, because he's sort of a jack of all trades. He knows how to do exhibits. He can train volunteers and part-time people. He can, do tours at the lab. Anyway, somebody who can and do a lot of things and not break the bank. And then I think with a new library director, you'll have somebody who has hopefully some prestige and we'll have the honeymoon phase, and they'll see the extreme need for museums and the importance of heritage tourism, and they'll argue for more staffing. That's sort of my thinking of how this might go if the city's funding goes in the right direction.
Sony, just one other comment. I retired from the city as a department head in, I want to say 2008. In those last 14 years, rightly or wrongly, Fred Muir and Hans, the 2 city managers, have been reducing department heads, not increasing them. I'm just saying, and I understand where you're coming from, Mike, but to get a museum as a department head, I think it's going to be very, very difficult, even in the future.
And I don't think Jim Conway was a department head. He was a manager.
Manager, that's true,
Full
yeah.
time. And but it was at one point it was under Public Works or something, I believe.
Right. But it was a manager, not, we wouldn't be asking for, our full-time position is not a manager, right?
Correct. Because the manager position, is a significant increase to what the budget is now.
maybe we can evolve into that. But anyway, other comments by other commissioners? So we have a motion on the table, a motion and a second. Mike is asking if we should ask for a museum manager at this time. If I have that correct.
That's not part of the motion, though.
That's not part of the motion.
No, I'm just saying Mike in the discussion is asking for that. So is there further discussion on this item?
Well, I would add that from a negotiation point of view, what we're asking for is let's say more than we need, not really, but if they're willing to negotiate, we end up with one full-time position, not 1.5 full-time positions. So this gives us a little squish if we have to negotiate.
Well,
Well,
the
I
only
think-
thing I would add is that when we go to them asking for this, we should provide documentation for why we need those people, what they would be doing, and so they don't think we're just pulling it out of the air.
So I'll be
Right.
providing documentation for why I think we need a full-time position. And so it is a little confusing to have, certainly anybody can make the case for something for the city. But it will be a little confusing for them to receive what I've submitted and then to receive something else from the commission.
So repeat again what you already got
Sure.
in
So
your wish list.
What I submitted was the existing staffing that we have now, and just pointing out that we have sufficient funds to have enough PTS to have the Colton Hall open 7 days a week. So that amount hasn't been reduced yet. We've just been told not to use it. But anyway, so the existing staffing we have now, plus on top of what we have now, a full-time position.
Okay,
Okay.
so you are asking, if everything goes through, we'll have the part-time staff in Colton Hall and other places, and we'll have 1.5 people working in the museum division. Right?
Yes.
Well, right, we'd have,
Okay, we need to have public input on this, but is there any other comments by the commission? If not, Francesca, could you ask for public comments?
Sure, and then to clarify, you had said Director Waite, the 1.5 positions, is that the 10 hours with the administrative assistant time?
Yes.
so, and that's actually another 0.25.
Yeah.
So we have actually 1.75 plus the museum attendance.
Well, the bottom line is the library director, Francesca, and Jordan's position will remain the same. In addition to all that, we're going to ask for one full-time non-management employee that would be devoted entirely to the museum and will help out getting our candlelight concerts and the art exhibits at the conference center in place. So,
Okay, so to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand, or if you called in by phone, dial *9. Charbotowski, there are no public comments.
righty. Any other comments by the commission, or are we ready for the vote?
Can I
Francesca,
just
then?
clarify? I'm sorry. Can I just clarify one more thing? So all of that you just laid out has already been asked for. Inga's already asked for. Okay. Thank
Right.
you.
And we're gonna write a letter, Kimberly, that documents it and supports it from the commission's viewpoint to the city council. And then when the appropriate time comes, one or more of us will speak out at the council meeting.
Got it. Thank you.
Francesca. Roll call.
Yes. We have Castagna,
Aye.
Evans,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes,
Peak,
Yes.
Sovereign,
No,
Thomas,
Yes,
Yes.
Sorry, so what did you just vote yes on? The 1.5 in addition to what we have?
Yeah,
No,
exactly what you
no,
asked for.
175.
Okay.
wait, just to clarify, I thought we all agreed that instead of, we initially talked about going from a half position to one position, but we talked about keeping the existing staff as it is, and adding one full-time position. Right? And that would result in, if Jordan doesn't get the full, that would result in Jordan's position, Francesca and Inga's replacement. And in addition to that, hopefully Jordan will apply for that job, another full-time position.
And the docents for Colton Hall.
And docents for, that's included in the budget. Alrighty, so if that's clarifying, are there questions still on that or no? Are we all set? And Inga, you'll draft the letter for my signature. Does the commission want to see it before it goes out?
Yeah, I'd like to take a look.
Alrighty, Bob, anybody out? Would you all like to see it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So Inga and I will work on the letter and we'll send it out before it's signed for comments via email. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep. The next item, director recruitment. It's a sad item. We're all gonna miss Inga. She's been, again, this last couple of years has been tough for all the department heads, but keeping the library and the museum pretty well functioning has been a very challenging task, and we're all going to miss you, Inga, but we hope you have a great retirement up there in beautiful historic Mariposa.
Thank you. Yep, there's a museum.
Many museums. That courthouse is a museum. So
And
do you
we
want
have a guest house, so
Oh,
fine.
a nice stop on the way to Yosemite.
Yeah.
So do you want to outline, you don't have to go through all the rigmarole,
Right.
but just outline the recruitment process and especially how it fits in with the museum supervision.
Sure. So this, I attached the job description that was approved by the library board and by the executive bargaining group and HR and city manager. So basically, I added in some things about museums because I thought that it is a really good match to have the department head that oversees the museums, also overseeing the California History Room, and just having that sort of focus and understanding of the significance of our history and the importance of heritage tourism for our economy. So anyway, but that's not to say we don't want more positions in the museums. So anyway, so I did include some information about that they would direct the Museums and Cultural Arts Division, and they needed to have some knowledge about museums, and they would work with the Museums and Cultural Arts Commission and have knowledge of the principles of museum operations and so forth. So we'll see, that's in the job description. And then the library board hires and fires the library director. So they are working with the Human Resources Department and the Assistant City Manager on a recruitment, and they are going to be using a recruitment firm. If we've sent out an informal request for proposals and waiting to see how those come back, but the goal is to have a recruiting firm do a lot of the preliminary work, creating a beautiful brochure to entice people to Monterey. Not that we need, most people know Monterey is a wonderful place to be. But anyway, and then they will do the initial screening. If we have a headhunter, they'll do initial screening. And then the idea is they will reach out to stakeholders. And so we want to make sure that they get feedback from commissioners about what's important in this position. So there'll be that opportunity. And then the finalists, once they've been all screened, will be interviewed by the library board.
And we
And
hope
I believe
we hope that will all be done before you leave, right?
the idea is, so I announced it when I did, with the thought that hopefully as I'm closing the door on my way out, the next day a new person will be coming in and dusting off the redecorating, is one of the friends told me when I became the director.
And on the basis of participating in the last open competition, going outside like this, that's totally impractical. It took more than a year to do it when we brought in the last new person, not Inga, but the last person from outside, and to run the library. That's just not going to happen. I'm sorry. I would like also to point to the class specification library director document, which we sent out. Thank you. And under the knowledge and skills, there is indeed a second skill called principles and practices of museum operation and administration. And again, most new people desiring to be library directors are going to look at that and wonder what the heck they're getting into. And it's going to make it difficult to recruit. And, you know, I love the library board, but when they have to decide the person to put into the job, if they don't have that requirement, that's the one, you know, that's not going to mean the library board won't hire them. So we're going to end up, in my opinion, with somebody who has no background in the library area, I mean, the museum area, sorry. And that, you know, when it came up to move the museum director into being part of the library, I said, this will work as long as Dennis and Inga are here, but when they aren't here, this isn't going to work. And I've got to say, I don't think this will work. I don't think you'll get the person who will be both a good library director and a good museum director.
You know, most major large museums that have libraries have library directors who run the museum libraries. So maybe they could target those areas, because there are people who are trained in both areas who work in libraries and museums.
I think Mike has a good point, but I think in terms of what we should do is probably just make a recommendation to the library committee to recruit someone who does have depth of museum management experience.
And I think in the long run, the commission has an obligation to maybe provide a little education on the way.
There you go.
And I think it also depends upon the person that goes into the full-time position that has been proposed, because that person might be able to grow and flourish, and who knows where that would go. We're looking for a manager at this point, not a historian, unfortunately.
Right. I think the idea is that there'll be a new administrator. They won't have the subject expertise and depth that we need ultimately for running the museums. And, you know, we lost a historian in Dennis Copeland, and that's a huge loss. But eventually, hopefully, we'll get the right combination of people, or we have somebody who's good at doing all that administrative stuff and then we'll also have more hands-on experts working on museums.
But Inga, you might speak to the commission. You have a young employee in the library, but he's quite a historian in and of himself, and he conducting the historic programs. Sean, you might speak to his capabilities.
Right. So one of the things I'm thinking as museums continues with libraries is when we have people who work in the library who have history expertise, to train them so that, Sean he has, background in history, he has his library degree, but he could be trained to fill in at Colton Hall. He would be thrilled if I let him leave the library and be, at Colton Hall for the day. And also be trained to open and close Pacific Biological Lab, eventually learn how to lead a tour of the lab. And then Francesca's also been trained to open and close the lab. So the idea there is we'll get more support from library staff. And we also have a librarian who coordinates our volunteer program, and that's Sarah Nolan. And she took on a lot of the onboarding of volunteers who then are winding up being volunteering at Pacific Biological Lab and at the Presidio Museum. She's just doing the paperwork, but there's a whole component we're all familiar with where you have to do online training, and so she was very helpful in doing that. So that's my thinking is as we work together to have more library staff assist. Not that the library has surplus staff. We don't have a children's librarian. We don't have a teen librarian. We just have one manager, and we used to have 2.5, and we used to have 4. So anyway, but I think we can help each other out because we have similar interests in great customer service.
Other comments by the commissioners on this item?
Since it came up, is there a temporary fix to bring Dennis back part-time?
So we would have to have the right funds to do that. And then also, since he retired, he would be considered a retired annuitant. And when you're a retired annuitant, you have to have a fixed start and end time or a finite project that you're working on. So I think a grant opportunity would be a wonderful way to bring somebody with his vast knowledge back onto the staff. So I think we need to keep our eyes open for grant projects. And of course, Dennis has to be willing to do so, but I think if we offered him the right opportunity, I think he would be willing to help out.
Mike makes a good point. Depending on the level of experience the new library director has, could we use Dennis in sort of a training as a historic manager with the new library director?
Mm-hmm. That's certainly something that could be looked into.
Yeah. Any other comments? John Castagna mentioned that maybe the commission might like to make a motion to give some direction or give our direction to the library board. John, did you want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll move, yes.
Could you state it again, John?
I move that we recommend to the Library Commission that they consider the importance of experience in museum management when they're evaluating possible replacements for the director.
Great. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Alrighty. And before we have further discussion, Francesca, can we see if there are any public comments on this item?
Yes, to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand or dial *9. There are no public comments, Chair Witowski.
Thank you, Francesca. Are there any other comments by commissioners on this, on the motion?
Yes. Although the knowledge of museums is required under minimum qualifications for experience or education, there is no requirement for either experience or education in museum work, which seems to me to essentially say that that was a throwaway in knowledge, that there's no real requirement for museum capability in their hiring documents.
I would recommend that we give some information to the library board if they're going to make the selection. There's no reason we should expect that they know what's involved in what Inga does for museums and cultural arts. And at least they need to know what the new librarian's going to be into, even if they choose to just follow the letter of the regulation here on what they're looking for. They could be developing a problem for themselves. So at least they should have the benefit of, here's what you need to know, and then they make their decision.
Can I get some clarification just on the practical side of what John Castagna is moving for? Are you saying we should write something? Or are you saying we should have a conversation? What is this?
I don't think it even needs to be a formal communication. I think it perhaps our chairman could have a chat with their chairman.
Okay.
Say that we have these concerns, and that's it. You know.
Okay.
Okay, I'll be glad to do that, and therefore we don't need the motion, if that's all right, John, if you want to withdraw your motion. I sat in on, Jim Thompson is a personal friend of mine, and I sat in on a library board meeting where they had this discussion on the recruitment, and I'll be glad to follow up with him.
Great. Well, here we go. Technical. I can't withdraw the motion. I move we table the motion.
And does the second agree with that? With the conclusion that I'll talk to the library board director about the commission's concerns.
Right, and there are 2 bullet points in this draft classification library director. One at the top of the second page that says represent the city, library, and museums. And then there's the one that Mike pointed out earlier down in knowledge and skills, where they need to know something about the principles and practice. Again, I think we're looking for a manager who is aware that they're very much involved in supporting the museum and cultural arts program for the city. And they may not require a lot of detailed knowledge about how we're going to put up electronic or visual exhibits and all the other details, but we want somebody that's interested in what we're doing and willing to do things that Inga indicated. She's training people in the library to do things that would help the cultural arts and museums organization. And she's taking her employees that have skills or potential for doing these kinds of things. That's the kind of manager you want.
Right.
They don't have to come from the head of the Air and Space Museum, because this is in many ways, it's a figurehead. It's our interface with the city council and the city manager and those folks. And so we need a good advocate.
Yeah, it's funny. and Inga, correct me if I'm not right, but I think the previous director actually ran a museum in Inyo County. So he had more of the qualifications on the museum side, but he kind of suffered on the library side, and he didn't work out too well, and he had a short-lived career of 1 year with the city.
Well,
So, you know,
and-
it comes down to the, like you just said, Bob, comes down to the particular person
Yep.
that has good management skills.
Yep.
Because this person had a great resume as a museum manager, but it turned out he did not fit well with Monterey.
And actually, museums stayed with Kim Bowie Burton, who was the community
Oh, I see. Yeah.
director, right? And that was one of the surprises when this person was hired.
Oh, got the job. Yeah.
Is then it's like, oh, but museums is going with the other person. We thought he was going to be, yeah. So I would say, yeah, find somebody who can be big and bold and charismatic and eloquent about the importance of museums and libraries, and then work on the knowledge experts that are needed.
And also be a good fundraiser for the library and fundraiser for the museums.
Yes.
Good,
Able
good
to
dis-
leap tall buildings in a single bound.
Yeah. Alrighty, good discussion on this item. That motion was withdrawn, so we're moving on to the next item, the Robertson Jefferson materials.
Oh, I have a question, not to prolong things, but on page 18 in the PDF of our packet, you have class specification. You have that page?
Yeah.
Well, if I read that correctly, if you're blind, you can't be our museum.
They modified that, John. The library board modified that to take care of the ADA requirements.
Oh, well, in that case.
this-
never mind.
Yeah. No, a good catch, but they caught it also, the standing and walking and other stuff. So that's all been modified.
Yes.
I always think of Stephen Hawking. He
Yeah. Now, was he a good manager though?
Also
Already.
he managed to stay alive longer than he should have.
Yeah.
medically.
Also
Okay.
on page 17, is it me or is it supposed to be principles spelt the other way? LES. Okay.
That's probably, you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. And I
Yeah.
just also want to chime in that my battery is about to die, so if I don't make it to the end of the meeting, that is why.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take it personally.
Let's move on.
I don't know where my charger is.
We'll move on to Robertson Jeffers. Inga or Jordan?
So I think since Jordan spoke with this, or maybe emailed, but anyway, he had the direct contact with the potential donor. So Jordan, if you have anything to say about this potential donation.
Sure. I honestly, so I was in email contact with the gentleman, Alan Mears. And so he had contacted the conference center about donating these items to put into the courtyard area that is named after him. But, and so the conference center contacted us, and looking over the materials, they obviously can't be put outside in that area. But I told them we would present this to the commission to see about if we wanted to accept the donation or not. But yeah, we definitely can't put posters in newspapers or magazines out in a outdoor courtyard. But one idea I had was, if we do accept this, that we could temporarily put it in the Alvarado Gallery, just so that there is something hanging up in there, because right now we don't have anything hanging up in there. And so that's pretty much everything I know about the donation.
Alrighty. Any comments or questions by the commissioners?
I'm wondering why it didn't go to the tour house.
Well, let me tell you, when I read this, I said, why in the world aren't they asking the tour house? And then at the end, I realized it's the tour house that's giving it,
Bam.
trying to give it away. Anyway,
Oh, he's on the board of the Tour House. He's also a member of the Robertson Jeffers Association, and he's been divesting himself of his Robinson Jeffers collection. And then he has these pieces that he's interested in finding a home for. I like Jordan's idea of an exhibit in the Alvarado Gallery, and I would recommend that we probably blow up is not the right word, enlarge some, pieces of his poetry to sort of help
Yeah,
liven it up. But in terms of sort of a long-term retention of art that pertains to our region, these are not this, they're not, the kinds of, where would these pieces wind up after the show? Would they wind up in displayed in hallways of public buildings? They're not great works of art.
We could make it part of the public art for city employees to have, but otherwise it's just going to be sitting in the vault because I don't have
Yeah.
anywhere else to put it.
but just the fact that we can have a special exhibit with Robert Jefferson, these photos, illustrations, his poetry, advertised the Tour House. That has a lot of cachet to it, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, and you can do things where you can have people come and read his poetry and
Yeah.
all kinds of things, like work with the Tour House people. I know they like to do that kind of thing.
John Castagna, you had a comment.
well, I hate to be the Grinch, but none of these are valuable. One of them, I don't want to go through one by one, but and they will take up a lot of space. If we want to have a Robertson Jeffers exhibit, we can always do that, and these pieces are not critical to that. We can always get copies. The book is even available online as a used book. Anyway, I don't particularly feel that we need to acquire these.
Okay, additional comments?
Well, I kind of agree with John. Once you finish the exhibit, like Jordan was saying, what are you going to do with them? You put them in your vault, well, they'll never be seen again.
Well, these are a gift, right? And how much would they take up? A lot of room, Jordan, in the vault?
The vault currently is overflowing. There is no more space, but like the artwork wall where this stuff would go, there is other stuff that is just stacking up in the vault because we just don't have the space for it to be properly stored.
Alrighty. Any other comments? Should these gifts be accepted, or should we say no thanks? Jordan, do you have a recommendation to us?
My recommendation would be no. Other than displaying it in the Alvarado Gallery, I don't see any use for it.
And you feel we can get enough material outside of this to have in the future, Robertson Jeffers display?
I would have to check and see if we have anything in our collection pertaining to Robertson Jeffers, but otherwise, like Inga mentioned, if we were to hang this stuff up, we could enlarge poems and other pieces of work, or see if the Tour House has anything that they could loan that we could hang up at the time. Because we also don't want to put valuable paintings or anything of valuable just hanging up where the public can handle them, right, like in the Alvarado Gallery.
Alrighty, thank you for those comments. So do we have is there a motion?
I motion we don't accept it.
I'll second.
Commissioner Thomas, did you say that you don't accept it?
Exactly, right.
Thank you.
Concur with the staff recommendation to not accept it.
Yes.
Francesca, we have a motion and second. Can we check if there are public comments?
Yes, to make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand or dial *9. There are no public comments, Chair Witowski.
Thank you.
Minor point, the staff recommended that we do accept it, didn't they?
No, but then Jordan corrected it during his oral testimony.
Okay, the written recommendation was to accept it.
Yes. That was Inga's recommendation. Jordan overruled her.
I see.
No. All right, any other comments? Roll call, Francesca.
Okay, Castagna,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
O'Neill,
Yes,
Peak,
Yes.
Sovereign,
Yes,
Thomas,
Yes,
Witowski.
Yes.
Thank you.
Alrighty, our last item is the Path of History Subcommittee. Tim and Bob and I are on that subcommittee, and we reviewed it this afternoon. Inga, with the press of all of our other stuff going on, was able to get out a draft grant proposal, and we've given her comments to on the grant. She sent it out later this afternoon to all of you. And so again, this is a grant to get a consultant on board to do the detailed planning for the two sub areas, Colton Hall and the Pearl Street project. And also to request some money up to $50,000 for a consultant and for signing. Some cases there'd just be cell phone signs, other cases there'd be the large signs like the one that was recently done at JACL. So I don't know if the other commissioners have time to review and comment on it this afternoon, or if you have any comments on the draft proposal. Tomorrow is the deadline for Inga to take in all of our comments, to revise it and send it in by tomorrow.
It's a very simple for some grant proposal, just a few paragraphs. So if you have looked at it and have any suggestions, please send them along.
I looked at it, but I have no suggested changes.
Thank you.
Any other comments? So I think Bob, Tim, and I gave Inga our comments. The public's going to be a little bit clueless on this since they don't have the draft report, but Francesca, could you see if we have any public comments?
To make a public comment, please raise your Zoom hand or dial *9. There are no public comments, Chair Witowski.
Okay, so no action needs to be taken on this, right, Inga? You have our comments, and if there's any questions, please let us know. And we'll be submitting this, and hopefully we'll get some money from the Community Foundation of Monterey County. So that's the last item on our agenda. Then we have commissioners' comments. John Castagna, you want to start out? We'll just go through alphabetical order.
Yes, I do have comments. I'd like to call the commission's attention to an article that appeared a few days ago, I think in the Herald, about the Big Sur lighthouse.
Oh, yes.
Maybe John O'Neill could refresh my memory.
I'll be glad to relay to you the comment that my daughter made. Remember, I served in the Soviet Union for 2 years. He lived there with me, and he said that it was good to see that we got more ink on the front page than Putin did.
Well, anyway, it's a very nice article, and you and Carol must be very pleased and proud. The other item, which we made our Saturday night, was the library's wine and chocolate fundraising, which, from our perspective, was very successful. Perhaps because when we picked up our bag, we used the contents for our dinner that night. Included a bottle of wine. So congratulations. I hope the library made a lot of money.
They made, I think 15. Oh, you know, Bill, how much?
Yeah, close to 16,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and this one was much simpler, but there was still a lot of hard work with, we have a great president of Friends of the Library, Diane D. Lorimer, and she put together a great committee and it turned out really well. Hopefully next year we'll be back inside the library. But almost $16,000 was the net proceeds.
That's really good.
Okay, Bob, do you have any comments?
Well, I have to agree with all the comments about the wine and chocolate, except that I miss the chocolate fountain.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And I really want to thank Inga for all she's been doing with this commission, and especially all that's going on now when she's on the brink of leaving. So that makes it even more precious.
Thank you.
John O'Neill, any additional comments?
Yes, I remain impressed with the amount of work such a small group of people accomplish. Thank you very much.
Here, yes.
Thank
I'm sorry, Kimberly, any comments?
I would just second what John just said and also Bob's comment to Inga in thanks. And I think I'm going to sign off right now because it's about to be done. Bye.
Bye. Mike?
Yes, I certainly agree with that expressed by everyone about how great Inga has been. In my comments about, I don't think it will necessarily work with the newly recruited library director. I certainly didn't mean to impinge on what I believe about Inga, which is that she's great. I also would like to say on March 12th, it's a Saturday at 10 a.m., I'm going to be giving a talk at the mural, the Monterey mural on the Conference Center on Pacific Street, on the history of Monterey as viewed through the mural. So if anybody would like to join that group, you're welcome.
Great, thanks for doing that. Tim, do you have any commissioner comments?
Other than I have to agree with everything everyone has said. Also, I appreciate what the library staff and museum staff has been doing. I'm particularly always impressed with the work that Inga has been doing because she always accepts my kind of weird ideas I have. And she works very hard on our history slam, and I'm very excited about all that. So I'm very happy for you, Inga, that you're going to retire and all that kind of stuff. And I also want to say that we are starting finally our garden to go with our mural starts this week. And it's going to be really beautiful. And the baskets have been moved out to the front of the hall. So
right, keep us posted on all the improvements going on there. And just echoing all the other commissioners' comments on Inga and just their choice of two great staff members and Sean and Jordan. They're really committed to the history and culture of Monterey. So that's it. We're all adjourned to our next meeting in April. Thanks for everybody. And hopefully we'll be in the council chambers in April.
Yeah,
all right.
We don't know yet, but hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Okay.
Bye.
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 Bye.